the stage, right next to the stage.
Run down, I don't run.
We are now on, okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Newmarket Planning Board's Tuesday, March 19th, 2019 meeting. And our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Carla, please stand. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And apologies for the delay, we had little technical issues here. Before we move to agenda number 2, I would like to congratulate Bill Doucette coming on as a full board member, and the re-election of Eric Boderman, who can't be with us tonight. But congratulations, welcome Bill. Then agenda item 2 we'll move forward with is public comments of anything not on the agenda. Is anyone here from the public with any general comments? Seeing none, I will close the public comments. Next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the January 29th, 19 minutes. Do I have a motion from any of the members? Oh, before I move forward, Mikkel, I am going to appoint you to sit in for Jane Ford tonight. So, any motion on approving the January 29th, 2019? Okay, Greg, moved by Gretchen. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Bill. Any discussion? Any modifications, changes, corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving to regular business, I would like a motion to postpone the election of the chairman and vice chair to our April 9th meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Unless we just want to vote in the people who aren't here. Jamie? I have a motion from Jamie. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Sarah. All those in, any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. First application this evening is Robert and Phyllis Page and William Benedetto. It's a public hearing for an application for major site plan review at 10 Norton Lane, X-map R5, lot 11-1 in the B3 zone. The proposal is to develop the property as a golf driving range or practice area. The site development will include a new driveway, parking, tee boxes, gravel walkways, putting greens, shipping areas, landscaping, and utilities. Who is here to represent the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doucette. If you could come to the podium to the mic or take the mic with you. Just introduce yourself and address, please.
Is that okay right there? That plan? All right, I'm Mike Sievert with MJS Engineering, and I'm representing, the owner is Phyllis and Robert Page, and the applicant is William Benedetto, and he's here this evening if I can't answer any questions. So as you said, the property is, it's actually located at 10 Norton Lane. Norton Lane is a small road off of Ash Swamp Road, so it does have almost 600 feet of frontage on Ash Swamp Road. It's map 6, lot 11-2, and the total parcel area is about 24 acres. And the slope of the land is generally from north to south into that wetland area right there. The majority of the property is wooded, and the proposal here is to design a golf driving range and chipping and putting and practice area. As you can see on that map, the driving range will be that long, narrow, kind of a fairway area that extends out to the east. That long, I guess, pinkish building there is the tee box structure where you'll stand and hit the balls. And then, of course, the parking area. And the other building is just a barn that would have bathrooms, storage for maintenance, mowers, and so on and so forth like that. The property is in it's in the Aquifer Protection District, and it is sand and gravel. It's mostly a Windsor sandy soil out there. And so there's a large excavation to construct this, to get that narrow, long strip there. And then along that northerly side, there'll be a tall bank there, and we'll use that for, deflection of balls and so forth. It's a 20-plus foot tall bank right there that'll be up there. It's wooded, like I said. All of the perimeter would stay wooded, and then this area down here where the wetland and the chipping area is a mix of woods and a cleared area, and there's hardly any clearing down there, but that will just be regraded where I show the kind of the putting and chipping areas down there. That's just kind of an old area where there was some excavation there before, and that will just be all smoothed out and kind of built up for the putting greens and so forth. Basically, the project is, there's a large excavation to build all this, and that will take somewhere in the neighborhood of, say, 2 to 5 years to complete. And it will be built most likely, I'm not sure exactly from the east to the west, but most likely proceed from east to west. And the idea is to build it in approximately 4-acre sections. So it'll be excavated down in the 4 acres or about 4 acres, graded out to where it's going to be the final grade, and then reclaimed prior to moving to the next phase. And so it'll be done in basically 4-acre sections like that. The last would be the westerly section down here. There's an existing house, and you can see it on the existing plan, but it sits right here approximately, up on about the tallest part of the property. Just a little bit behind it is a little bit taller, but that house will remain in place until the very last phase. And it's a single family home now. There's someone living in there. There's a well and a septic there now, so that'll all remain in place. And if you look on the survey plans, the ones in the front there, that kind of shows all of the existing conditions. And as I said, there's an access way in here called Norton Lane, and it comes in and goes all the way through the property. And there, like I said, the house sits here, and there's a barn back in here, and all of that will eventually go away. But It is on the property right now. I think that's about it. I don't think I've,
Thank you. Diane, do you have any comments on the completeness of the application?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I have reviewed the application against the site plan review checklist, major site plan review, and I found that there were a few deficiencies, but the plans are substantially complete. I have provided a copy of our checklist to Mr. Sievert and identified for him the things that needed to be addressed, things such as final signature on the plans and the engineer's stamp and the land surveyor's stamp. He did indicate that he had a rendering of the buildings on the property, and he would share that with us this evening. That was one of the things I noted. And also, I noted that you had mentioned, Mike, that you had you were asking for a waiver for the hydrogeological study. I didn't see that in the submittal, and I didn't know if that was still in the works or what the status of that was.
what I had planned to ask for 2 waivers. So one of the waivers was for the scale.
Which we do have.
And I submitted that. The other waiver, I'm not sure I can ask for a waiver for the hydrogeological study. I mean, I'd like to ask for a waiver for that. That would be our intention, and I can explain why if you want to hear it.
Yeah, maybe briefly to bring the board, and we'll have to have a written request on that.
Sure. My question is it part of the zoning regulations? Because it's in the overlay district, and can a waiver actually be granted?
Okay. So it would
I don't
have
think
to,
so.
it would have to go before the zoning board of adjustment for
Right.
For a waiver.
a waiver or a variance,
A
would be a variance.
Probably.
So
So I
I
don't
guess
know.
it's up to you to, how
Right,
you
I-
wanted to, perhaps you could work with our town engineer to come up with perhaps
That's,
a modified or, since it's,
yes. And that's what I was thinking.
pretty low impact use
Right,
with
maybe we
respect to the
could-
aquifer.
We could speak with the town engineer once they get into the review more.
Right.
And talk with them about maybe our reasons, and just so you know, the reasons are, we're really just doing an excavation. The base grade here, like I said, it's a cut of anywhere from 2 to 20 plus feet. And then there's a little bit of fill in some areas because it's a little bit lower. But essentially, we're taking it down to about elevation 110 to 112. Right now, it's anywhere from 134 to 104. And the groundwater table is in the neighborhood of about 96 or so 6 or 7 feet below the ground on the low end. And obviously, you can see it right there in that picture with all the blue right there. So this area right here, being at a 110, will be well above the groundwater table, and we have a, stormwater treatment and everything. So we're a good we're a good 8 feet, if not more, above the groundwater table in all locations.
So, other than that, the application?
Application is
Okay.
substantially
Does anyone
complete.
have any questions relative to the completeness of the application? Do I hear a motion to accept the application as being substantially complete?
I'll make a motion
Thank you,
to
Sarah.
accept the application as substantially complete.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gretchen. Any comments from the public on this, or abutters on this particular application?
I have a couple of.
Please come up and state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Joni Jones, 330 Ashland Road, so I'm in a butter, my husband and I. So we're 2 driveways down or 3 driveways down from Norton Lane. My concern is, and I missed where it is exactly, I know it's going in from Ash Swamp. We have an awful lot of traffic, we have a lot of problems with traffic and people really, flying on that road. As far as the police department's always on the road, which is a great thing, but do we need more traffic for a driving range? We already have a driving range down on 108. Well, it's Newfields, but There's also a driving range, I believe, down the street at the golf course, so, or part of a driving range. My question is, do we need another driving range, really? And I wanna know, is that all it is? Will there be lights at night in there? Will there be, I mean, we don't really know what the plan is per se, I mean, that's why we're here. We do know it abuts our property, and, we just wanna, be familiar with what the exact plan is, how many buildings, what, a ball's gonna be in our backyard, things like that,
Great, thank you. Any other abutters or members of the public who wish to speak or ask questions? More questions, comments?
Well, I'm her husband, Jeff, and my concern is, I'm curious on the cutback of the woods, if they're gonna be taking all the trees out right to the boundaries. I'm surprised a couple of my other neighbors on here, cause they're actually going by that diagram, their backyards come right up to the, stone wall that's currently there. But like my wife said, I mean, I am concerned if there's gonna be lights there at night. I mean, we got lights shining up into our backyards till 9, 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I got nothing against the guy really wanting a driving range. Personally, we had one on 152, and it's defunct. So, I mean, I don't know what he's gonna do here with a chip and putt or whatever. But like I say, I don't wanna know that the woods are gonna be wiped right out. And then from my backyard, I'm gonna be looking at a big screen here so the balls don't come into the backyards. And, the lights and what have you, I mean, if it's just daytime operation, not a big deal. But, if he's planning on being there till 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, cause I travel quite a bit, I don't want it to be looking like down in New Jersey or Connecticut where the lights are blaring there at 9, 10 o'clock at night, coming through the woods into the house. So, I mean, that's a concern of mine, and, that's pretty much primarily that. I mean, we still gonna have some privacy, I guess, is basically the big thing. I know that they did the land clearing out there back, a few years back, and, they came up pretty close to the boundaries when they cut. And I don't know if you guys were here or not, but, the owner of the property, I think his name's Dave, he originally wanted to get a pit permit there and remove material. And, he was gonna take and clear the land, and then it was like, well, we're gonna put some livestock out there. Then we found out later, he changed his mind on that, and he was gonna take and wanted to remove material. And then the town said no more pits in town. So, I mean, I don't blame the guy. He wants to make some money, he wants to sell his property. But I just, like I say, and like my wife said, our road's gotten very busy in the 31 years we've lived here, and everybody uses it for a cut through now. And, we actually know people on the PD, and they try to take and be fair with people. But it is a pretty heavily traveled road now, and, I don't know, I mean, like I say, I just hypothetical. I mean, if everybody's rushing back and forth, I mean, are you gonna have a bar there? You're gonna have like a golf pro shop there? I mean, that's what I'd like to know. 'Cause, if it's just a driving range and we're gonna have our privacy and the lights aren't gonna be blaring in the backyard, we really don't have a big problem with it. But, if it's gonna be one of these things where everything's gonna be wiped out and they're gonna have a 40, 50-foot net in our backyard so the balls stay out, then I got a problem, cause I don't live here to look like Connecticut or New Jersey. I like the woods. So, cause, right now, I mean, we have permission to go and hunt there and everything else, which means that's gonna be gone, but, I mean, that's all right. I mean, that's progress, I guess, but, anyway, that's my big thing is the cutback. Cause a lot of the woods have grown back in where we have a little bit of privacy. You don't really see the sand pit and, and what have you, cause there is a small pit right out there right now, that was used, I guess, primarily for personal use, I'm assuming. But,
What's gonna happen with the house?
but that's pretty much, you know, what my concern is, the privacy factor and lights at night. And then if there's a bar, that's the other thing. You know, if there's a bar there and people are drinking, the road's bad enough as it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. Jones, you had another question?
Yes, and also,
Yeah,
so is the
please.
house gonna be staying there,
It's a
or
question for the applicant?
is the house gonna be staying?
No.
So the house is going?
Thank
Not
you.
right away, though. Just- He didn't answer it correctly.
I think you answered the question.
Yeah.
Permanently, you said it would be there for the short term, is what you said to me
It will.
earlier today.
I'll come back and address quickly if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, please do.
So it's, there's no bar, there's no pro shop, there's just the barn with the bathrooms and storage for the equipment. The driving range, so all this is wooded. All this stays wooded as it is now. This stays wooded here across the front, and then there's a thin woods surrounding the property, but everything else is cut.
So where is the house now?
So the house is right here now, right there. And the house won't stay, it'll stay for the first 3+ years through the construction, but then it'll be removed in the end and replaced with that large square right there in the pink is an 80 by 80 barn that would be replacing that. And that long one is the driving.
What's your plan as far as like from the stone wall boundary to the end of your, say, mowed lawn for the driving range? How much of a buffer are you planning to leave there? Are you leaving 30 feet of woods, 50 feet of woods, 60 feet of woods? Or are you gonna take and come right to the boundary with this thing?
When you say the stone wall boundary on this northerly property
No, we're up on the other end where all the walls are gonna be going.
over here?
Yes.
Mike, can you just describe the whole buffer around?
So, yeah, the whole buffer is, there's a 30-foot, or a 20-foot, it's a 20-foot buffer. So the trees will be no closer than 20 feet unless they don't exist. Or up to, 50 to 70 feet off. And this is a 75-foot buffer across the front. This back here on the easterly boundary back here is, in this corner, it's about a 20-foot buffer, and in this one, like I said, it's about a 50 or 60-foot buffer of trees.
Not very big buffer, 'cause we're up on the end there.
Well,
But this is
he's-
1,000 feet away, so a person driving a ball would have to hit a
No, I
straight.
understand that. I'm just,
Yep.
20 feet is.
You'll have to come to the mic to,
the chair.
you'll have to come to the mic to ask any questions or make comments.
Sorry.
And
I mean, 'cause
Just
20
as far
feet's
as-
about from here to the wall. That's not really a whole lot. I mean, as far as like compared to what we have now. Okay, that's my big thing. I like to say, the land was cleared, but it's grown back pretty, more or less bushy, if you wanna use the term, because the stumps have grown basically as bushes. So you have some privacy back. My big thing is I just don't wanna be, no offense, I don't wanna be looking at all this junk. I mean, if you can keep enough trees there where I don't have to look at it, fine. I'm not concerned about the noise, because it shouldn't be a lot unless you're mowing and picking up the balls, so. But that's basically it. I mean, 20 feet to me is not a whole lot when we got requiring 75 feet to build a house from, a road, or 25 feet or whatever boundaries now.
Yeah, these will
for
be all-
property.
all items that the board will consider in deliberations. Could you I have your address again? I don't,
It's 330, we're like right down in here. We'd be probably right in here. This
you're
little spot.
on Ash Swamp
Yeah,
Road?
like right
We're
in
in a
here.
butter.
It's not showing on the plan as such.
So we basically abut probably right here,
What is your actual address and,
330 Ash Swamp.
okay, thank you.
I mean, That's pretty much, like I say, I have no problem with them having, I don't wanna lose my privacy,
Sure.
cause it's gonna screw up our, quality of life in a way, and then, it'll screw up our property value too, so.
Any other, questions to the applicant from the,
I guess I had
See-
a question.
okay, I just wanted to get public comments in. None? Okay. From the board? Go ahead.
So
Sarah?
you asked about how late the lights would be shining. I don't think you addressed that.
So, it will not be open at night and it's not lit. None of the driving range is lit. There will be, I show, just, I believe, 4 lights in the parking lot, just for, people to get out of there if they, drive till dusk, if you will, and then for, just security.
Anything else from the board? So we should move this to, TRC.
That is correct.
I'd also recommend doing a site walk.
It's a good idea.
Want to schedule the site walk first? Well, Ian,
I
I'll
would
appoint
need
the
to,
TRC.
I need
What's
to
it-
coordinate with the town engineer and
Okay.
department heads on the TRC. But the site walk we can certainly schedule today, if
Okay.
you'd like.
So what's the board's preference on a site walk? Our next meeting date is April 9th. So Saturdays are typically good, people like Saturday mornings or, early evening, especially with it staying lighter out. Is there a preference?
On a date?
Yep, a date or day, Saturday or a weekday evening,
Saturdays are better for me.
okay?
I could not do Saturday the 6th.
I cannot either. Boy, we're so close.
About the 13th?
Well, our meeting's the 9th.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we don't have to do it
Yeah.
before the next meeting.
Yeah, let's propose the 13th. Saturday morning, the 13th, is that good with the applicant?
Up in, April 13th.
April
Yeah.
13th, site walk.
So you'll do it after your next meeting?
Yes.
It'll be after our
we're
next
not-
meeting. Yeah, we're not
we-
sure if we'll have a TRC between now and the next meeting.
We usually don't bring it back to the planning board until after the TRC has completed their review and their recommendations.
We'll continue that.
So we'll have to continue to the May meeting.
I'm not available on the 13th, but I can make sure someone else is.
That'd be great. Okay. So we'll schedule the site walk for April 13th
Time.
and 8 o'clock. Does that work? 8 a.m.? The public is invited and the abutters are invited to attend that site walk. There'll be someone representing the applicant will be there as well to answer questions. Okay. TRC, does anyone wanna volunteer to be on this TRC committee? I think we should volunteer Eric, but he's not here. I'm happy to serve.
How many do we need?
No more than
No
3.
more than 3.
Okay.
Jamie?
I'll
Great.
volunteer.
Jamie and Valerie
And Eric.
and Eric.
Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion to continue this hearing to the April 9th meeting?
Well, as for all practical purposes, it would be continued to the May meeting because the site walk comes after the
Okay.
next meeting. Unless the
Yeah, we'll-
applicant requests it, I guess.
Yeah, 'cause we won't have TRC before then. Do you wanna continue to May? I know you. Well,
Well, she's checking with the applicant.
I'm not sure we would be hearing at the April 9th meeting if the TRC hasn't met. Let's continue it to the 9th and then try to get the TRC meeting prior to then. In case there's any particular questions that the applicant can get to us.
That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like a motion to continue this hearing till April 9th.
So moved.
Okay, Gretchen?
Second.
Second. Jamie? Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, okay. Okay, next on the agenda is thank you.
Thank you.
The Town of Newmarket New Singular Wireless PCS LLC. It's a public hearing for an application for a minor site plan and special use permit at 4 Youngs Lane, tax map U3. The lots are formerly 48 and 49, which we merged into one lot at our last meeting, and they're all in the B2 zone. The proposal is to construct a new tower-based personal wireless service facility consisting of a 150-foot monopole telecommunications tower and related equipment. There are 2 parts to this particular hearing. One is the special use permit, and then the second is the actual application acceptance for the site plan. So we'll hear the special use permit first.
X that out. Here you go. Yay.
Okay, so again, if you say your name, please, and who you're representing.
So I'm Elizabeth Kohler. I'm an attorney with Downs, Racklin and Martin, and I'm here representing AT&T Wireless, which is the new singular wireless PCS entity, but doing business as AT&T. And I have with me some of our experts that helped to assemble the application, actually find the location, working with the town and assemble the application. And to the extent that there are questions in their area, I'll have them come up and speak in the mic. But we have Frank Kelly, who did our site acquisition work, has been in close contact with the town, has worked on the negotiation of the lease with the town because the project's on town-owned property. I have Dave Archambault, who is the individual who handled the balloon test and assembled the photo simulations that we are going to walk through. And then Martin Levine is a radio frequency engineer, and he prepared the coverage plots that we'll also take a look at. These were all materials that were part of the application that was submitted. So I'm going to run through a PowerPoint presentation. I'll do it fairly quickly because it really does cover everything that was in the application, but I find it helpful if we're kind of all on the same page. And so, let's see.
Just to back up, we're hearing 2 things. One, special use permit,
Yes.
okay, and then whether or not we're accepting the site plan as being substantially complete.
And I'm also recommending, well, following the hearing, at the board's discretion, the approval of the special use permit for the zoning.
Great, and I'll touch on that a little bit at the end of the presentation. These materials are really just kind of about the FirstNet project, this particular project.
Thank you.
So let me see if I can get this. Okay, so I am going to talk about FirstNet, talk about the description of the facility. I think it's really important to kind of go through the photo simulations because they really aesthetics tends to be a kind of primary concern when you're siting wireless telecommunications facilities, and then we'll talk a little bit about kind of where we are in the process. So FirstNet. FirstNet really came about after 9/11. Commission was put together and made a strong recommendation that there needed to be better coordination with first responders and public safety. And so their recommendation was for the FCC to kind of commission a nationwide public safety network. And that happened, the recommendation came out in 2010. 2012, the idea of the FCC setting aside spectrum and then ultimately putting out the work to build and manage this nationwide network kind of took place through a series of years. March of 2017, there is an RFP, and AT&T is the winner of the RFP and selected to be the company that will kind of build and manage this nationwide public safety network. Every state in that process had a option to kind of opt into AT&T's contract and have AT&T do this work for them, or they could select somebody else that was kind of in the process. Ultimately, every state elected, including New Hampshire, to have AT&T manage this network, build and manage the network. And that's really kind of why we're here now. So through that process, AT&T right now is aggressively expanding its network. It's improving its existing sites so that they will work with the FirstNet frequencies, and also trying to fill in coverage areas. And Newmarket was an area of particular concern for New Hampshire public safety because of the lack of coverage here. And so it was one of the first batch of sites that AT&T has kind of budgeted and working on to complement the public safety network. FirstNet is a private-public partnership, so FirstNet frequencies will rely, the FirstNet frequencies and the existing AT&T frequencies will work to support the FirstNet deployment. The flip side of that is the deployment of the FirstNet network, for example, the new coverage that we hope to bring here to Newmarket, will also serve AT&T subscribers. So the frequency is not exclusive to public safety, but it is designed to kind of require priority access in any emergency, so that first responders will not deal with not being able to make a call, not get their data sessions if there is an emergency that takes place. So they have priority access to the network. I won't go through everything on this slide, but the focus on FirstNet is it needs to be available for first responders. It needs to be interoperable with our first responders. There is a lot of development right now going on that will bring new services. So there's new devices that will improve public safety from a data and video standpoint, and all of that is kind of being designed and engineered around the FirstNet network that's being built. This is just a quick snapshot of AT&T's coverage, and the colors really just show, where you're talking about priority access, which is the lighter color, but it's a nationwide network. There are some other innovative things happening besides just with your handset. I didn't pick the name Deplorable program, but the idea is that these are kind of additional mobile cell sites that can be deployed in an emergency. They're oftentimes referred to as CALs, cell on wheels, but the idea is you can improve your network at a location. If you have a national disaster or something like that, it's real time. We can boost the network through the use of these vehicles. I'm going to leave this with you. I'm not going to play this video, but there's some exciting videos on YouTube that really show you the power of FirstNet. This happens to be one of them that I liked in particular. But, so here we are today with this proposed site. So before I jump into the exact details, I really want to compliment particularly Frank Kelly and the town. We kind of reached out very early to the town to try to determine where would be an ideal location for this site. We shared our coverage objectives, and there was a host of meetings, including some that I participated in, that really led us to the location where we landed. But it was a very cooperative process, which is really nice. It isn't always that way. So the location that we settled on is 4 Young Lane. It's actually the location where the current fire station is. It is a developed site. There is a small tower there already adjacent to the fire building. It is owned by the town, and AT&T has negotiated a lease. It's not fully executed yet, but it's fully negotiated to lease 100 by 100 parcel, for the location of the site. The lease will be executed upon getting all the permits and incorporating kind of the final site plan design. That's really the reason that the parties are holding up and getting that lease signed. So this is just a little snapshot of the site plan. The site will be accessed by kind of using part of the existing paved road, and then there'll be a 12-foot wide extension, a gravel driveway extension to the location. We're proposing underground utilities that will run from an existing utility pole on Young Lane. The actual facility itself is composed of a 150-foot monopole. It will support 9 antennas. It is being designed to support additional co-location of up to 4 carriers that could attach to the pole, and then there's also space that we're reserving for municipal public safety if there is a desire for your local fire or police to co-locate on the tower. So we're not proposing today that those be permitted, but we are designing the structure so that they could support that. Oops. Oh, it's not showing up on yours, okay. It's a fenced compound. It's supposed to be 60 by 60 feet, the actual compound. There will be a concrete pad that will house like an 8 by 8 equipment cabinet, and a backup diesel generator will also be in there for backup in emergencies if there's a power outage. We're not proposing any lighting. The FAA isn't requiring any lighting for this, and we're not proposing any signage on the site. The FCC has certain signage requirements for safety and security purposes, and so if that is triggered, that would be the only signage we're proposing. So, and you can stop me, just keep going. Okay, so the coverage objective. So what you show here is a coverage plot that shows the existing coverage in the area, and I'm going to go through 2 sets of plots. There are 2 spectrum bands that AT&T operates in this area, and the 700 is really the spectrum that is assigned for the FirstNet. And there's also 1900 spectrum. The difference in propagation is that the 1900 is a higher frequency. It doesn't propagate as far, and you'll see this. But I thought it was important to show both. So this plot shows you the current coverage, and the blue star in the middle is the proposed site. So you can see where there's really no coverage in this area.
Is that plot limited to AT&T's coverage?
Yes.
Okay, so there may be other coverage by other, okay.
Yeah, this is a plot that shows AT&T's 700 megahertz spectrum, and then where you do see color, those are coverage coming from adjacent sites. So when you the second plot here shows what the coverage is anticipated to be with the tower that's being proposed. And so the colors differences, the green, and Martin can keep me honest here, is really the strongest kind of handheld coverage, in-building coverage, yeah. And then what you see with gold is more outside or in-vehicle coverage. White is kind of just a coverage level that is not able to support voice or data. I'll quickly just go over the 1900. So you can see the propagation is less here, and then from this site you can see how it's a lot less. But the importance of the 1900 is that it really supplements the 700. So you're adding densification into the network. You're getting more capacity by using both spectrum bands. I'll step back. with the 700, and this is really the one to think about from a coverage standpoint, but you see significantly improved coverage along
Excuse me,
Route
Beth.
108. Yep.
Yeah, I really wanna get to application acceptance on this special use
Okay,
permit.
so go along.
And then if the board accepts that, then we can get into the specifics of the special use permit,
Okay.
and then get to the site plan.
Okay, so would it be, it's just thinking about time, should I just jump, I can skip through the photo simulations.
I think that's applicable to your special use permit.
Right,
But
okay,
I think that, in the interest of time and what we're trying to deal with this evening, to be more specific in dealing with the special use permit first. Just because we haven't accepted any application and we're getting into such details here.
okay.
So if we can have more of if you have a broader overview, with the information specific to the special use permit. And the whole reason there is a special use permit involved here is because the proposal for this particular location is not within our ordinance. So they have to meet certain criteria in order for the board to vote to allow this particular facility on a different location in town. So that's the premise of the special use permit. And I think according to Diane, that application is substantially complete.
Yeah,
So we can act on that
can
this
we
evening.
pause maybe to do that? Because I think we're getting into a lot
We're
of
getting
detail
way
here.
too many
So-
details for the application.
So maybe we can take a timeout and do the acceptance?
Yeah, I would like to
Okay.
do that.
I think that's fine.
Okay, just pause for a
Yeah,
minute.
Right.
absolutely.
So according to everything that's required for the special use permit application, information, is the
Yes.
application
I
substantially
have
complete?
reviewed the submittal against our checklist for a special use permit, and all of the required information that's stated in the zoning ordinance is present in the application or has been addressed in the application, and therefore, I feel that the application is substantially complete, and I would recommend the planning board accept the application for the special use permit, at this point only, for technical review, so we can proceed with the presentation and analysis this evening.
Okay. Is there a motion from the board? And we're just
I'll make that
accepting,
motion to accept the application for special use permit as substantially complete.
thank you, Bill. Is there a second? Okay, Bill. Any discussion on the actual application acceptance? Hearing none, we'll call a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carries. So if the applicant would really like to do presentation on the specifics of the special use permit and how you're meeting each of those criteria, that would be great. And then if you have any public comment on the special use permit, we'll open it up for public comments.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I think the first criteria is really gets to, it's in kind of the public good. And I really think the first net and what I've talked about and just the improvement of wireless service in the community touches on that. There are, aesthetics is a big, we talked about that, a big criteria, and I'll just quickly run through our photo simulations that we feel like demonstrate that, this location really minimizes aesthetic impact and that we meet that criteria. We did float a balloon. A balloon test was done on October 31st. We floated a balloon up to 150 feet. And then what you see here is photo locations, and the blue are the roads that were driven with the balloon up in the air to determine, is it visible? If it's visible, we'll take a photograph and then we'll prepare a photo sim. So what you can see here, green is where it's visible. The balloon was visible and we prepared a simulation. Red is confirmation that it was not visible from that location. Yellow is a obscured view, so you can see it through trees, but difficult to see. Again, to try to make this quick, what I did was I've only included the simulation, not photographs of the balloon, but those are included in your application material. Most of these locations are all within a mile of the site. It's very difficult to find locations where this was visible beyond that mile radius. And this yellow actually shows you the mile radius. This is the closest location, and this is 19 New Road, and it's very difficult to see, but it is in the backdrop. This is actually taken from just the next, 3 Young Lane right by there, and this, kind of one of the most visible locations, because you're basically on site. But that's a rendering of what it will look like, and you can see adjacent to it is the kind of existing whip antenna that's on a tower for the fire station. Again, I'm just going to quickly go through, not visible here. This is 128 Yale Road, so you're, 0.18 miles. Again, obscured view, very difficult to see through that tree cover. So 5 Colby Road, again, very difficult. David, do you see where it is? It's very, I should have spotted it.
I'm not sure which photo was that.
This is photo 5, so we're here.
Just to fix the point.
Again, I guess to the point is it's very, oh, it's right, it's red, not visible, sorry. We didn't have anything.
Gotcha.
Okay, 23 Dartmouth Circle. This again is one of the more visible locations, but you do have a lot of screening on the lower part of it. Stop me if you want me to address any where they're not visible. So here, 66 North Main Street, you're a little over half a mile away.
Is that the top of the parking lot across from the mills?
Yeah.
So you're elevated at that
Yeah.
location.
This is so 2 Moody Point Drive. You're a little under a mile. So you're down here. Again, it is visible, but the slim design of the monopole and the screening underneath, I think it's pretty minimal impact. So before we move on to that, so again, I think given its proximity, I'll step back. There was a significant focus on siting this to, again, make it very minimally visible from the downtown area and from kind of residential areas. And so I think in the end, this is a really well-sited project.
Can I ask a question relative to siting? So you did an inventory of the existing towers and verified that there's no room for co-location on any of those?
Yes. So we looked at all. There were no existing towers that could achieve this coverage objective. We also looked at existing structures as well, and again, either because of the terrain challenges in Newmarket, or kind of sensitivity to, approximation to residential areas or historic districts. Yeah, so we initially looked at the water tower and kind of ruled it out from a construction kind of capacity standpoint, physical capacity standpoint. But I think you raised, and Diane passed along, a question about that water tank. And so we did also look at it from an RF propagation, just set aside the kind of physical constraints on it. We wanted to look a little bit closer at the RF propagation, and it covers a significantly smaller portion of Newmarket. And I do have a propagation map I can share to show that.
Our ordinance requires that you
Look,
at all
right.
existing towers and verify.
Yeah, which we did. We looked very closely at kind of a number of other town-owned properties, including there's a utility pole that the town owns on Granite Street that has some antennas on it. Again, it's too low. It would have been a significant it would require a significant upgrade, and that's very close to a lot of residential areas. We looked at the police station on Exeter Street, just constructability. It's a very small lot. We couldn't figure out how that would work. We looked at Mule Park, and actually that would have been an ideal site, but given the nature of the use there and proximity to residential, we kind of ruled that out. And we also looked at the senior center on Beach Street too, but again, given the residential nature of that site, this, where we landed seemed like a much better option. So those are, for example, some that we looked at. Go ahead.
Yes, so we did look at Mule Park, and Mule Park works very well for us. And the interesting thing there is that that site's within the use district where it's an allowed use there. And we met with the town, and they really preferred us to go to the fire station. So we had our RF engineers look at it, and we pushed them really hard, and we got them to agree to go to this other site. And that's the reason we require a special permit. We wouldn't require one if we went to the other site that works. And we think it's a better site. The Mule Park one, it's in a more densely housed part of town. There's parks there. There's a playground there. We just think it's a better site that we ended up to. I think we're at the right site.
Thank you.
So moving on to another criteria is natural environment. AT&T as an FCC licensee and a carrier is required to go through a full NEPA process for all these projects. And that is underway. It's not complete, but we do commit, and we said so in the application, to submitting the complete NEPA when it's done. Part of our challenge was the federal shutdown slowed kind of the pipeline of that kind of work. And part of that NEPA process also includes the historic impacts analysis, Section 106. Again, our preliminary review suggests that we're not going to have any adverse effects on the environment or in historic properties. But again, we commit to submitting that. We couldn't build a site without those approvals anyway. Lighting is another criteria. I think I stated, and we have a report from, confirming that the FAA will not require lighting on this. Impact to property values is another criteria for the special use, and there is quite a few studies that have been commissioned that demonstrate that homes in proximity to these wireless facilities do not have an impact and a negative impact on their property values, and really the opposite is becoming much more true, which is people are not selecting homes where there isn't adequate coverage, wireless coverage. Tower safety. I've submitted with the application a couple of different exhibits that touch on the tower safety. We've got a letter that says the tower will be engineered to meet all of the engineering requirements, including supporting what we talked about for additional co-location. There's also a radio frequency admission safety report that demonstrates that the level of RF admissions meets the FCC standards, so it's safe for human health, and that's a report that was included in the application. The traffic impacts is another criteria, and this site is an unmanned facility. So there's, on average, once a month, a maintenance visit, but really no impact to traffic. And public safety and services, so we kind of touched on, how it will help public safety, but oftentimes we think about that criteria as impacts on your existing municipal services, and again, unmanned, so we don't anticipate any impacts on your public safety, your schools, your municipal services. There's no water. It's used in the facility. So I went through that pretty quickly. We touched a little bit on the co-location evaluation. There's a lot more detail in the application about the parcels that we looked at and why we ruled those out. The next criteria is to support co-location. We already touched on that. We are designing it for future co-location.
That is specific, future co-location limited to municipal?
For other carriers too.
Not-
Right, so, and I just wanted to also say that with the lease that we negotiated with the town, if other carriers occupy space on the tower, there's gonna be additional revenue coming to the town.
Thank you.
There is a, and these additional criteria are actually touched or addressed in the lease as well, but if AT&T ever abandoned the tower, we would be committed to remove it and restore the property. It's required to be maintained and insured. We talked about signage, which was another criteria, which would be, again, only if the FCC requires it. I'm just checking through to make sure I've touched on all the criteria. Yeah, I think that was the end of it, so.
Any questions for anyone from the public or comments? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing on the special use permit application. Any questions to the applicant from the board on the special use permit and meeting the criteria? Gretchen?
I was just curious about, you said there's another smaller,
Tower?
tower?
At the site, yeah. What is that for?
It's already.
Yeah, I was wondering what it was for and whether they get combined, if it's municipal.
Frank, you want to take
Yeah.
that?
Yes, there's a small tower that's next to the building there. We've offered the fire department to make space available on their tower. At this point, they don't want to do it because it would be too long a run from their equipment room that's inside the fire station, and their equipment couldn't work up there. We have made space, and it shows on the plans that there's space available on the tower if they want to move it over there in the future. But as of the present, because of the distance to the run and the impact it would have on on their signal, they don't want to go on the tower right now.
So the existing tower is used by the fire station, and it's a whip antenna that supports their dispatch.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Any discussion? Diane, want to go over
Could
any?
I present my
Yeah,
recommendations?
absolutely.
Yeah. The criteria for telecommunication towers is in our zoning ordinance, and it does, as was indicated earlier, there's a table that identifies several town-owned sites. Unfortunately, Young's Lane was not indicated as one of those sites. However, in the zoning ordinance, it also provides the option to the planning board through a special use permit to provide for other locations. And I have done a review of the application against the criteria, and I wanted to just briefly go over that with the board. Written proof must be provided to the planning board that the proposed use meets the purposes of the overlay district. And in my memo on page 2, I hope you all still have a copy of it, I've sort of summarized, there's 8 points that cover the purpose statement, if you will. And the applicant has done an excellent job in addressing each one of those points. And I feel that the criteria has been addressed and that the proposed site is consistent with the purposes of the overlay district. The second criteria that needs to be addressed is an evaluation has to take place to show that there are no other sites available that are workable or available for a new facility that would cover the existing or the proposed coverage as stated by the applicant. And I think it's been also clearly explained in the application that there are a range of towers, but they don't fill the needs of the provider, and that they are not workable to achieve the goals that the AT&T has for improving cell service and to meet their goals under the FirstNet program. So given that, I would recommend that the planning board approve the application for the special use permit, and I'm suggesting two conditions. One, that the cell tower be subject to site plan review, as required in paragraph C of the telecommunication facility section of the zoning ordinance, which we'll take up as the second item this evening. And secondly, that all this performance standards that are listed in paragraph D, that all of those standards be complied with by the applicant. And given that, I would recommend the approval of the motion by the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion on the planner's recommendations? Or any additional conditions the board wants to consider? Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion for approval of the special use permit based on the application information provided and the recommendation of the town planner with the conditions as noted?
I just have one question, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Mulling this over. I don't know if this is pertinent to the special use, so let me know if it's not. I'm just curious, this is being done because it's part of the first network? And I don't know what the conditions are for keeping this particular monopole as part of that network into the future.
Well, I think relative to the special use permit, even if it wasn't part of that, would we be rendering a decision based upon the public use, if you will,
Right.
in this location? I think it's a good point, but I think if you took that out and if that was not part of the presentation, would it impact the actual benefits to the public in meeting all of the criteria under the special use permit? So it's a good point to raise. So I think it would have been, if it was a duplicative type of situation, then maybe we would think of it differently. You know, if it didn't have that purpose. Any other discussion? Okay, I'm open to a motion. Bill?
I'll make that motion.
As the planner has recommended with the conditions,
Yes.
A and B. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
By Gretchen, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion approved, thank you. The second part of this this applicant's presentation is for the, site plan review application. I'd like to hear from the town planner first on that.
Yeah, I did go through the checklist for the minor review as well as the requirements under the site plan review ordinance for cell towers. And for the most part, the application is complete. There were a few things that were brought to my attention regarding the conceptual nature, if you will, of the site plan. And the question was raised as, do we need more detailed information in order to evaluate storm drainage, if you will, and also the road construction and the impact of the road, if you will, on the site and so forth. And I reviewed that with our town engineer, Phil McDonald of Underwood Engineers, and he had some recommendations for providing additional information. And he outlined that in a memo to the applicant's engineer, Mr. Russo, I believe his name was. And also, Underwood had a question on redoing some of the pavement on site, and he addressed that to the Public Works Director, who has not yet gotten back to us with that information. There have been some revisions made to the plan. When I arrived in my office this morning at 9 o'clock, they were all sitting on my desk ready to be reviewed today before the meeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the plans over to Phil McDonald so that he could do a review. I mean, he was really the one who identified some of the deficiencies with the plans. And we didn't have a letter back from the applicant's engineer indicating what changes were made and so forth. So I guess I'm thinking that maybe we need to get some feedback from the engineer and get some clarity as to whether there's enough information in the new plans that were submitted, and I think everybody here got a copy of those in their mailbox, just to make sure we have everything that we need to be able to start the site plan review process. And we do have a proposal from Underwood Engineers to do that review, and Elizabeth has brought us a check this evening so that we can get that process started. So I guess I'm inclined to say maybe we should hold off until the next meeting, until we hear from Phil, or it could be a conditional approval of acceptance of the plan, provided that information is acceptable. And
Acceptance of the application.
right, I'm talking just acceptance of the application, not approval of the application at this point. So I guess I just, I present that as a question for the board to discuss, and what do you feel comfortable with? And I'm very confident the applicant will come forward with the information, and I did speak with Mr. Russo directly, and he was very amenable to provide whatever was needed to provide the information so the technical review could be done. So with
So
that,
I'd
I'll
be
leave it up to the
inclined,
board.
yeah, I'd be inclined to accept the application as being substantially complete. That will give the town engineer enough time between now and our April meeting to review the new information that just came in, as well as working with Diane on any further comments for the April 9th meeting. So I think that that's where I would be with this.
I think that makes good sense.
So can I have a motion? Gretchen?
Acceptance.
Acceptance, this is just acceptance of the application.
Yeah, a motion to, accept as substantially complete the application.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Sarah? Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, application has been accepted. Relative to, the application itself, I think at this point we should postpone the application, or do you wanna do a TRC meeting on
I
this
would
one
like
now?
to set up a TRC committee and get that scheduled, and,
That's fine,
so that perhaps at the May meeting, we'll be in a position to
perfect.
make a recommendation, and we can, move forward with the application at that time.
So I need 3 members to serve, well, 2 or 3 members, and this one will have a lot of town, department heads
Yes, I have
involved,
invited
so-
the town department heads, because I don't know if all of them have been part of the discussions that the town administration has had with the applicant.
I'm happy to be
Bill?
on that committee.
Okay, Bill, anyone else? Paul? Gretchen, you got your plate full with town council stuff, or?
I'm
Which I do.
holding off because we have our organizational meeting.
That's
tomorrow.
right.
Okay.
We're not sure if Gretchen will be
I
with
think I
us at
just
the next meeting.
heard Eric volunteer for it.
I think I did too.
I did too.
Okay,
I
Bill and
hear
Eric are on that
something,
TRC, the other heads. Okay,
Anybody else? I mean, we don't need
That's
3
good.
members, but,
yeah.
we try to
And
extend
then
it to all.
just a motion to continue this hearing till, April 9th.
Right.
Need a motion for that.
So moved.
Moved by Jamie, seconded by Sarah, so April 9th.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Do we want to do a site walk?
We can do a site walk.
Does it make sense? We could do it the same day
Wanna
that
do
we're
it
doing
right after the,
Yeah,
okay,
April, what day did we say, the 13th?
that's gonna be the 13th.
April 13th, Saturday, 9 o'clock. You guys up for it?
Which
At the site.
April 13th.
April 13th.
It's a Saturday.
We'll make it work. What time?
Okay. And we don't need everyone, just a spokesperson, I guess.
What time do we, is it?
What do you think, 9:30?
Yeah, I would say that.
9:30? And everybody is invited, of course, to join us for that, including any members of the public out there who are interested in the project.
A few of the department heads have already been there.
Yes, Rick Malasky and the police chief, yeah.
That works for the applicant?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, next application.
Thank you.
This application is, the applicant's,
What's that?
let's just pull it out because the next applicant's gonna Thank you.
Yeah, take your.
Okay, next on the agenda is Walter Cheney, the Nature Conservancy, public hearing for an application for revision to the plan titled Revised Final Site Plan for Moody Point, dated and revised April 1987 by Frederick Drew Associates, recorded at the Rockingham County Register of Deeds on 10/14/87 as plan number D-17107, and a modification to the Environmental Management Program for Lot 13, recorded on 7/01/15 at book 5632, page 0619, which was a condition of the planning board's approval of said revised final site plan pursuant to the town's alternative design subdivision regulations, as noted on said plan, and subject to the general laws of the state of New Hampshire governing said approval. The lot is located at Cushing Road, tax map R2, lot 36-13, in the R1 zone. I will be recusing myself as I am in a butter.
And I think I'm gonna recuse myself. I haven't done any work on this specific thing, but I think it's best.
I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jamie, you'll be chairing? I'll
will.
let you run the show. Thank you.
Thank you for reading that first.
Do you want to sit over here? We'll give you the title.
Okay. First time for everything.
So-
Would you like to start by introducing yourself?
Well, speaking of running the show,
I can
how
help
do I
maybe.
get this on there?
Is that yours?
Yeah.
So that has to be canceled out. Perfect. Okay.
So should I use this?
Yeah.
So that-
You do fine.
Thanks for having us here tonight. I'm Jan McClure, the Director of Land Protection at the Nature Conservancy, and I'm representing Walter Cheney as the landowner because we have an option to purchase his property, and so we're working out the details of doing that in order to exercise our option and acquire the property. So to advance this, just.
Take space bar.
This is a picture of the property taken by your own Bill Doucette.
We did ask him to recuse himself.
This is just to orient you. You may be familiar with our Great Bay offices here in Newmarket on Bay Road, where you're sort of in the front of those. This is Bay Road here. Great Bay out here. It looks like it's low tide. And the property is this darker brown area that extends actually up into the marsh and includes the woodland buffer on the Moody Point development. And we have been working to protect that marshland for a number of years, but I'm just going to give you a quick summary of the last 5 years of that project. And this is just a quick history and timeline from our point of view. We've been working with Walter Cheney to protect the property even before 2013, but this little project started in about 2013. We started working with Walter on ways to protect his property, and by 2014 we had a plan in place, and he sold an easement to the Natural Resources Conservation Service on the property, and that's a division of the Department of Agriculture. And we negotiated and recorded an option to purchase the entire property. Now the USDA NRCS easement covered almost all of the property. And so the option to purchase, but not all of the property, there are two pieces out. The option to purchase covered the entire property and had stipulations about how Mr. Cheney couldn't change the land at all. But the exercise date was 2017, and this was 2014. So he wanted some time before he closed on the property. So we were being patient, waiting until he was ready to transfer the land to us. In the meantime, in 2015, the town recorded a notice of development restrictions on the entire parcel. And as a result of that, it gave us some pause because those development restrictions were dating back to the 80s and were somewhat antiquated, and we could tell that they were going to cause problems for us as the landowner holding, with the town holding the easement. There were just some funky stipulations about various things that would be very difficult to monitor. It's one of the things that a lot of organizations and towns have learned over the years in terms of making sure that their restrictions and easements are able to be monitored effectively. So along about 2017, we decided we could not exercise our option shortly before the option was to expire, and began conversations with the town and with NRCS to see if there was some solution to removing the restrictions or amending them in order to make it possible for us to acquire the property. We worked closely with the town. NRCS told us that what we had envisioned initially was that NRCS would extend their easement over the two areas that were left out of the Wetlands Reserve Program easement. They eventually determined that they couldn't do that. Just federal regulations and the bureaucratic paperwork that would be required didn't allow them to do that. So we started with the town pursuing other options, and eventually the town council, the town attorney recommended a solution, which was, after we kind of went over what we would put in place, recommended a solution of removing the notice of development restrictions and placing other restrictions on the two pieces that were not part of the WRP easement. And that's what you have before you tonight, that proposal. So just to acquaint you a little bit better with the property, I know you have a lot of this in your packet, but I didn't know how much of it you really had a time to absorb, and there are a lot of different documents there. But this picture that you just saw was taken from here, looking this direction, so it was capturing some of this property. The area in red is the Walter Cheney property that we hope to acquire. The area in yellow are the two areas that were not included in the WRP easement, but they are included in the entire property. And so the end result of what we hope you will do tonight is to lift the town restrictions that are currently on the entire parcel and place new, agree that we will grant conservation covenants on these two pieces to the town, so that the end result will be that we will own the property, but there will be legal protections in place on the entire property so that it's fully protected. And so I've tried to summarize a little bit what your plan is, but Diane, you can help me because it's a little complicated. Even Diane and I have been back and forth on this with Attorney Radigan. But basically, you will revise the Moody Point site plan of 1987 and modify the environmental management plan and recommend a rescission of the notice of development restrictions, which were part of the environmental management plan, and a replacement with the declaration of restrictive covenants that were in your packet on the exclusion areas. So that apparently has to be approved by town council, and once that process is all approved, we will close on the property. The restrictions of the town will be lifted, and we will grant restrictive covenants back to the town on the two areas that were not covered by the Wetlands Reserve Program easement. So I think that covers everything. I just wanted to come back to this in case you had any questions.
So, kind of looking at the end,
Uh-huh.
the end result, my take is that it unifies it, the protection.
Right, oh, well, exactly. If we just lifted the restrictions, then these two areas would not be covered by anything that the town could enforce as part of their environmental management plan. Isn't that essentially what you're saying, that there wouldn't be any restrictions on there except for our ownership? We don't have any plans to do anything with this property, but a lot of times, especially communities like to see additional protection in addition to just our ownership. In other words, we're not going to sell the property or transfer it to somebody else. We own all of this and that, so this will be an addition to our Lumberland Creek Preserve.
Are the protections at the other areas similar to what's being?
They're all different.
They're all different. So it'd just be the red plus the yellow. That would
Right.
be sort of the same.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly.
Yes. So the mechanics, just walking through that, so you just bulleted down.
Right,
First we have to lift, then we apply.
right,
And we apply, and then we find.
right. And so it'll be all done at the same time. Once we get all the documents together, the restrictions will be lifted, we'll acquire the property, and then we'll grant the restrictive covenants to the town. Anybody else?
Yeah. No.
Just leave you with Bill's picture.
That is a wonderful picture, Bill. Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to go through?
Yeah, I would. By the way, you did an excellent job, Jan, and I really can't add too much to what you said because you did a great job outlining it. But yes, we did spend a lot of time going back and forth and finessing the language and getting it reviewed by town council. And I think as of, 4 o'clock this afternoon, we said, I think we're here. So anyway, having said that, the staff recommendation is that the planning board vote to accept the application of Walter Cheney and the Nature Conservancy, which will be the first step in this process. And we're accepting the revision to the revised site plan that was dated October 14th. And we're also, as part of this application, considering a modification to the environmental management plan for Lot 13, which was one of the planning board's conditions of approval on the final revised site plan back in whatever the year it was, 87. So I guess the first action would be to accept the application. Indeed, it is complete. We have a lot of documentation. We have a lot of information in the files to document this whole process. So I feel comfortable with what has been submitted and presented this evening. You want to go forward with that?
Any further discussion? Do we need public comments on the acceptance of the
No.
application? That's the next step.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So could we get a motion for accepting the application?
I'll make a motion to accept the application.
Do we have a
You want
second?
it for a second?
Mikhail seconded. Any-
All in favor?
Okay.
Okay.
Motion passes. Okay. So the second piece of this is that the planning board vote to approve the application of Walter Cheney, the Nature Conservancy, for the revision to the site plan titled Revised Site Plan for Moody Point, dated, I have the date up here, October 14th, 1987, which is referred to as Plan D17107, that's on file at the Rockingham County Register of Deeds. And second, to approve the environmental management program that's now in effect as pursuant to that approval of the planning board, which is was recorded on July 1st, 2015 at book 5632, page 0619, which was the condition of the planning board's approval of the final plan. And I'm recommending the following condition. And I have issued another revision to my amendment, my staff memo, which is dated March 19th, and I left a copy for each of you, and it is highlighted, the revised condition is highlighted on pages 3 and 4. Does everybody find that? Okay. So the condition is that this will be approved, subject to the rescinding of the notice of development restrictions as found in document dated July 1st, 2015, on file at the Rockingham County Register of Deeds, and replacing it with a proposed declaration of restrictive covenant, which is Attachment D, which you all received in the earlier memo, which is the draft language from the Nature Conservancy. And that's subject to the town legal council approving that and the town council, the governing body, to approve that for recording simultaneously with the conveyance of Lot 13 in its entirety in fee from Walter Cheney to the Nature Conservancy. So that's my recommendation. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay.
Now, your new condition covers the question that I had, because I thought it would make sense to make sure
Clarify
that
it.
it's attached to.
And we'll be, advised every step of the way by our legal counsel to make sure everything is, falls into place, and will meet the intent of the planning board's wishes, and the town council's wishes on this.
That amendment outlines it.
Right. So,
Okay.
you might want to,
Public comments.
ask if there's any public
Yes.
comments. Open it up for public comments, public hearing for public comments.
We will open this up for public comments on any butters here that would like to speak.
I have one question. Do you want me
Come on up. Introduce yourself and your address, please.
I'm in a butter, Jerry Gerbero, 123 Cushing. My question is really on hunting. Is hunting going to be allowed, or is there going to be anything to keep hunting from happening in that area?
The Declaration of Restrictive Covenants doesn't have any prohibition against hunting. We don't generally prohibit hunting on our properties, but there are state regulations about how close hunting can happen within residential areas or between residential areas. I doubt that that area of Lot 13 qualifies in terms of on the upland buffer area. But we have had hunters in the marsh hunting geese, for instance. I've been there when they've been out there in the marsh, and that will continue.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there anything you can do to post? Because of the buffer, the tree buffer, they don't even see our house. And so consequently, we have hunters right on the shoreline
Yeah.
who are shooting back up into the trees.
Yeah, they're usually shooting up, I think.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's still.
I think what I can say to you is that our stewardship staff will look at that, but we generally don't post areas unless there's a particular issue with hunting. So I don't know for sure that we would post that area if it would be necessary, frankly. Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah. But I
can
will
you
definitely.
look into it?
Yeah,
Because it
we will
is
get
happening.
together with you and the stewardship staff and see what, your concerns are and work on that.
Okay. And should I bring up the downed trees?
Um,
Or not?
yeah. We'll cover all that when we get together with you, because
Okay,
I know
okay.
Krista has talked about that.
Okay.
We, as landowner, the new landowner will be equally constrained by the easement
Mhm.
that's granted to the federal government. the Wetlands Reserve Program easement. But that doesn't mean we've looked through the easement and there are provisions for, I think it's safety and health or something like that to accommodate changes or forest management practices. So I think it's just a conversation we'll have to have with you and then with them, and see what we can do and what they consider ecologically important there. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Next.
You can do this. Hi, good evening. We are Trish Simon and John Badger. We live on Cushing Road 508 and 510 Cushing. And we represent the Moody Point Community Association. We're here tonight in support of the ownership and easement changes proposed on Lot 13, adjacent to the Moody Point community. We have been involved in protecting Lot 13 for many years. During this time, we resisted fencing, view restrictions, and other threats leveled against the Moody Point homeowners living adjacent to Lot 13. We sought ownership change and worked in the background with the Newmarket attorneys, supporting the litigation to protect the property. We also worked patiently, very patiently, with the Nature Conservancy as they slowly moved towards ownership. We appreciate the tenacity and perseverance of Diane Hardy, Steve Fournier, and other Newmarket officials in initiating successful litigation to retain the original conservation protections issued by the Newmarket Planning Board in 1985. This quite literally saved the property. Tonight, the Planning Board has the opportunity to take the final steps to assure that this valuable property will be held in conservation in perpetuity as originally been envisioned in 1985 by the Moody Point community when it was conceived. We trust that tonight the Planning Board will approve the agreed changes. The Nature Conservancy will soon assume ownership, and the entire property will be placed under a unified conservation easement. Thank you very much.
Would anyone else like to come forward? Okay, then we'll close the public comment section.
Right.
And any additional discussion before putting in a motion to
Act on the application.
act on the application?
Thank you.
And,
Nope.
okay,
Call the question. Call the question. Is
So
there a motion?
is there a motion to act on the application?
I'll make a motion to approve the applications of Walter Cheney and the Nature Conservancy.
A second. All those in favor?
Can-
Oh,
Can we just clarify, consistent with the recommendation that was presented to you this evening and the conditions that we presented?
Sure.
Okay.
thank you.
Just want to make sure that's in.
Yes. You want me to say it?
I think
Okay.
everybody understands that. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Unanimously voted.
Unanimously voted. Approved.
Great.
Excellent.
Thanks very much.
A lot of,
Great job, Jamie. Can we leave that out?
Yeah, that's a great
It is
picture.
a good picture.
Can you send me a copy of that? Or are you,
that's,
Actually, Bill, you can send them a copy,
you send us a copy, yeah.
but I wanted to ask
That one?
if we can put it on.
That's beautiful.
That one looks really weird though.
No, it doesn't. It's excellent. The cloud formation is great.
I spread out a little bit
That's
when I moved
okay.
over.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Appreciate it.
Okay. Our next order of regular business is Maplewood and Vaughn LLC, a public hearing for an application for revision to condition of approval for 6 and 7 to be 2 zones. Said revisions clarify the language of town when permanent vesting beyond 5 years will occur. I saw Rob here earlier. Did he
You
leave?
did? Is he out there?
He's here.
Oh, okay. We thought he.
That's for you.
Okay. The cell tower people. It's gonna be on her show. On the phone. Congratulations, Valerie.
Okay. Mr. Graham?
Good evening.
Folks, we'll ask you to take conversations out into the hall. Rob, you're up.
Good evening, Rob Graham from Maplewood and Vaughn Holdings LLC. We're here this evening to ask for a minor change in language from, say again, clarification. Clarification, thank you. On our vesting language in our developer agreement. This is kind of our last housekeeping issue in the developer's agreement. Before you, you've got the language. I don't want to make too much of this. We've got a couple of sites there. We're going to be doing major improvements into them. We'd like to build the intersection for the state of New Hampshire. We would like our sites to be vested going forward into the future when we either have pad-ready sites or we have an intersection built. And so we're here to ask the board to to clarify that language and amend the existing notice of decision.
So, for everyone at home, that doesn't have this in front of them, basically this is the industrial park, and the approvals were going to have permanent vesting upon substantial completion of the building and site improvements, which were shown on the approved site plans in 2018. The applicant is requesting that we actually change permanent vesting, which is beyond the 5 years, shall occur upon establishment of pad-ready parcels through completion of the excavation and site improvements, which again are shown on those approved plans. It's a phasing approach. And then that was for lot 7, and then lot 6 is that it had the similar condition, and the applicant is requesting that permanent vesting be changed so that it was upon completion of the Route 108 intersection work or the establishment of pad-ready parcel through completion of excavation. So they're basically, instead of building the buildings, they're looking to just have pad-ready sites. Does that sum that up?
Sure does, yep.
Any questions to the applicant relative to this request for change?
I've got a question. What's pad-ready site?
Good question.
A pad-ready site is a site that shows the improvements built as approved by the site plan. Obviously, we don't pour a foundation for it. Obviously, we don't pave, but we've constructed the drainage controls. We've constructed the slopes. We've stabilized those slopes, those types of things. All the things that you would reasonably expect to do prior to actually building a building in a site and to get ready for it, but not things that you would rework when it's time to go build a building.
So you're saying all excavation would be complete, all drainage facilities would be in place per the site plan?
Correct.
There'd be no pavement?
Not for the building.
Not for the building.
Yep. And not, for example, we would have, make sure that we've got the site stabilized, and that if we've got, for example, we have a steep slope and we have anything that's there for a drainage on a slope, we want to make sure that we have that in place and that we don't have a problem from a drainage standpoint. We wouldn't be installing a catch basin in the middle of a parking lot that's not built yet, for example.
So the parking lots, it's building pad ready, but the parking lots aren't built either.
That's correct.
Right.
Pad ready in the industry means the site is at subgrade, and utilities are within a certain distance of the pad. In this case, we have municipal water, but we're connected to sewer based on attendance demand.
And it's pad ready relative to the site plan that's already approved. So if you have
Correct.
someone coming in that wants to do a different type of building, or a different size,
We may
or
modify that.
use, would have to be modified for drainage
Correct.
or impervious coverage. Did that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, I kind of know what the answer was.
It's a useful
No,
clarification.
No, it's,
Have some more of those questions?
make it easy for
The other issue is for the other site is, the reason that we bring up we raise the issue of the intersection is, we have a 1-year permit with the Department of Transportation to go build that intersection. We wanna go build that, it's gonna cost about $150,000 to do. We don't wanna go do that and then not be allowed to build a building. This is really a semantic language issue in the document. We're vesting the site plan in order to build a building in the future. That's why you would vest and have a placeholder to do that. We don't need to vest if we've built the building.
Right, but without having to come back to the planning board if the zoning
Right.
changed.
Yeah, so we're trying to just clarify it now.
Bill?
I think you've got a unique site that makes this a simple question to answer, but at pad ready versus constructed, can we get some sort of a confirmation from the engineer that there are not gonna be drainage problems?
Well, we're under monitoring for drainage problems until we're at that pad-ready stabilized state. Underwood is gonna end up monitoring that.
There's the phased approach for.
It's also governed under alteration of terrain.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. It's not only the town's review, but alteration of terrain.
The design is based on completion of construction, and that's how the drainage works.
Mhm.
Once construction is completed, where this is not gonna be completed, it's gonna be brought to some static position.
Mhm.
And is that static point, does that work from a drainage standpoint?
First of all, it's a sand pit, but,
Exactly, that's why I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
you've got a unique situation, so
Right.
the answer's probably easy.
correct.
But I think in the town's perspective, not being experts in drainage, it might be helpful to have a letter from your engineer saying, pad ready, we've reviewed the drainage design of this site and see no concern over,
We can do that.
So you'd like that as a condition?
yeah.
And that letter be provided when? Now,
Yeah.
okay,
So
as
this
part
is a
of the.
condition of
Yeah, we
condition
can do
of
that.
this.
We'll get that over to you next week. That's no problem.
Okay.
The applicant's great. It's
Okay,
an
so it
applicant.
would
It's in
be-
the-
so
it's
once
in
we
the
get the
mold.
letter
There's
in-
not flooding of
They're
any
not making
property,
any-
but- right.
Once we get that letter in
Yeah,
hand, then that
impervious.
would satisfy the condition.
Right.
We're happy with that.
And that can be done administratively, it doesn't have to come back to the board.
Right.
Okay, I hear you. Just wanna make sure I understood the timing.
Any other questions of the applicant?
So there are two lots mentioned, lot 7 and lot 6.
Mhm.
So what is the difference? I don't know what's lot 6 with lot 7.
There's
Yeah, side by side.
They're next to each other.
Yeah, the first, as you enter in down Forbes Road. So
Forbes Road,
the
that's right.
there's the one, will be one on the corner that was approved last year, and then the next one in on the right, so both on the right, but they're two separate lots for two separate buildings.
Okay. But they're connected to each other.
They abut each other, yeah.
They abut, but they're not, it's intended that at some point they could be subdivided off.
Right. Their designs are integrated.
Yeah.
It's, for all intents and purposes, it's a single site as far as our alteration of terrain, designs, drainage, management, and those types of things. At some point, they'll be separate sites. For now, they're not.
Right.
Any other,
So this 5 years is from when we did the conditional approval.
correct. Any other questions for the applicant? Or for the planner? Hearing none, Bill, would you like to make a motion with your condition?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised language of the conditional approval for both lots 7 and 6 as stated with the condition as discussed.
Clear for you, Diane? Okay. Second on that?
Second.
So this is the language.
Okay. Any
Yep.
further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Next order of business, we have an application.
We do?
Yes.
Oh, we do,
Consideration
yes.
of alternate appointment.
We do.
He said having so much fun, he
Wants
wants
to
3
come back
more.
for more.
Well, actually, I was quite surprised how many times I was actually, appointed to be.
And we appreciate your attendance
We do.
in need
your
to
contributions.
do that. Mikhail is looking for a 3-year term expiring in 2022. I have a motion to appoint as an alternate.
I'll make a motion to appoint
Thank-
Mr. How do you say your last name?
Sorry.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Jamie, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. Next year we'll see your name on the ballot. Okay. Old business, master plan, would just like to, we had mentioned at the last, January meeting that we would, like to do, get a committee together to just kind of review where things are at with the master plan and maybe what chapters we should be focusing on. Is there anyone who'd like to serve on that committee? And Gretchen, you gonna report back on anything with the town council? On
Yeah,
where the council would like to see us going?
there was just a comment on, let's see, what was the chapter?
Energy?
On
Is it the energy?
economic development.
Oh, that one,
Yeah.
definitely.
Because the town's currently contracting with the consultant. And I think the suggestion is maybe wait till that consultant's done their work and then we can see what,
Okay.
whatever that outcome is.
And where was the council on the, was it the
Energy?
energy? Any
Conservation.
discussion on that? Nothing comment?
Tony didn't come
Okay.
forward, okay.
All right, so would anyone like to serve on this committee? And I'm happy to be on this committee.
Sure.
Can we have, I was gonna say, can we have a committee
Jamie?
of one?
No, I don't want a
Val?
committee of one. Jamie?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Okay, good. So you're gonna come back and report to the full board?
Yep.
With your recommendations and ideas? Good.
So we'll get together with you on that, Diane. And then also where funding might be available.
That's always the problem.
Right. Well, that might limit what we're going to do.
Right.
Okay. Diane, do you have anything to report?
Yeah, I wanted to recognize that Janice Rosa, who's a long-standing planning board member, did not choose to run for re-election this year. And I just wanted to make mention that she was a very dedicated planning board member and had wonderful contributions. And I'm certainly going to miss her, and I just wanted to congratulate her for her service to the town and thank her for her good work.
Very good. Anything on the planning end? I see we have our local officials handbook.
Yeah, it's been
That's been
updated.
in, good. And there's the spring OEP conference must be coming up.
Yeah, I think we got something, it's in May this year. I'm
We can
sorry
get
I
that
don't
out from
have
Sue
that, but I
again.
think Sue did send out a
Okay.
placeholder for people.
Good.
And it would be a great conference for new planning board members. I don't know if,
Okay.
did you attend last
Yeah,
year,
last year,
Sarah
yeah.
and Jamie? And I think Mikal has attended several years too. So we have funding available to send everyone to pay their expenses, and it would be worth your while.
What are the dates for that?
I have to go back and check. Yeah, Sue sent out a reminder to everybody a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't get a copy of it in my folder, so I apologize.
Gretchen, anything to report on the council, other than good votes?
Just that one one chapter, I guess, is the one that I remember, because we haven't,
Well,
I wasn't at the last one, so.
okay,
So we
but the
can
McAllen,
consult it.
obviously the, McAllen
Yes.
Dam Pass,
Yes.
a lot of great work by Diane
Yeah,
on
and
that.
I just wanted to thank
And
the
council.
the public for their support of the McAllen Dam resolution, and I was thrilled to hear of the results of the election. Thank you.
Okay. Any other committee reports? And we're serving on other committees right now. Conservation.
Yeah, conservation, we had a pretty light agenda, we're still working on the photo contest, which,
Oh, great.
we'll post to Facebook, working on the content and the verbiage and all that.
Okay.
But it's planned to be in October that we'd actually be
Oh, great.
making a submission at the Stone Church.
Okay. Yeah, the only other thing I had on chairman's report was Janice, hopefully you're watching, if not, maybe you'll run a rerun. We really appreciate your service, not just to the planning board, but to the town, and, we, hope you might consider becoming an alternate. Hopefully Eric will be back next month, and at that point, we'll take up, the, voting on new chair and vice chair.
Put that on the agenda for April 9th.
Okay. Great. So, any other business? If not, anyone has a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
At 9:03.
Planning board is hereby adjourned, 9:03.